Okay, I have not uploaded in like 2 months, and I haven't spoken about Guatemala or Mexico. So I'm heading for Australia on Monday. So this is going to be probably the last time I'll get a chance to do this because there's kind of just other stuff that I'm going to be at. So welcome back to another episode of Travel Talk. And up on Instagram, I put up like a question box and said anything you want to know about Guatemala, Mexico. I have all the answers here, or all the questions, and I'm going to give you my answer. So again, this is my personal opinion, and it's going to be from my own experiences. So let's jump right into it. What was your route through both countries? So I came up from Copan in Honduras, and I took a bus across the border and into Guatemala City. I didn't stay in Guatemala. I got a taxi straight to Antigua. Then from Antigua, I actually met two of the girls that I met in Honduras and Panama, Nettie and Millie, and then Basti as well, who I'd met in Honduras. We all ended up staying in the same hostel on the first night. So we spent the entire month together. Plus Ben flew out to Guatemala City and we were all together. So it was like 5 of us traveling around together. Is that 5? Yeah, that's 5. It was 5 of us together for the entire month of Guatemala. We went from Antigua to Lake Atitlan to El Paradon back to Antigua, because myself and Ben didn't get to do the Acatenango hike. I think it's a Acatenango. You hike up and you look across at Volcano Fuego just like erupting. It's class. So we did that. Then we went from Antigua to Lanquin, so Smuck Champay, if you've heard of that. It's like these natural springs and it's outrageous. You do like water rafting and caving and things like that up to there, and then up to Flores in Guatemala. So yeah, that was our route through Guatemala. Then from there, myself and Ben went across to Mexico, did San Cristobal, Puerto Escondido, from Puerto Escondido up to Oaxaca City, and then Oaxaca to Mexico City, where I flew home. So that was our route. It's like a pretty big like zigzag through it. The only thing with El Paradon is it's like so far out of the way, and your only real option is to like turn back on yourself and go back into Guatemala. Guatemala is like, it's easy enough to get around, but everything takes really long. The country's massive. Same with Mexico, like night buses are really popular, and everywhere you think you're only going, obviously on a map, I know it like looks smaller, but the distance that you travel to get, like this far is outrageous. Like night buses, 12, 13 hour buses are pretty common. So yeah, that was our route. Is speaking some Spanish necessary? I wouldn't say it's necessary. Like you can get by. I'm pretty sure most people know like hola, ¿cómo estás? And that's kind of, greeting people. It's a nice thing to know that. You can get by not having any Spanish. It is beneficial to know how to like ask for stuff or directions, because a lot of people don't actually speak English. So that's one thing I would say. If you are going to like Central America, like pick up a little like phrase book, stuff like that. It's handy to know, oh, quiero, like I want, donde es, where is, and then you can just sort of like mime it out or map it out. But yeah, everybody's super friendly, and they understand that not everyone has Spanish, so they'll do their best to help you regardless. Alright, how long did you spend in Mexico City solo? So I actually wasn't solo in Mexico City. I was with Ben, and we spent 4 nights, I think. It was just shy of a week. We did, or five nights. Yeah, we did 5 nights in Mexico. I think it was 2 nights 2 nights in the historic centre and then 3 nights in Roma Norte. Historic centre is really nice. My cousin Cormac actually sent me his friend Chris. He's from Honduras, but he's living in Mexico City. So he like sent me a lot of recommendations, and he said that in the historic centre, like it's good during the day. There's like a bit of a buzz because everyone's like coming to and from work, and there's plenty of shops and things to do. But at night time that like gets really quiet and there's not a whole lot going on. But in Roma Norte, if you want like nightlife and things like that, it's I think it's described as like the Beverly Hills of Mexico City. It's like really like upper end, but there's a cheap hostel there. Something boutique, like boutique hostel Roma Norte, something along those lines. That's really good, and it's like €12 a night, something like that. That's ideal. And there's these really cool like markets and stuff, like people just like you or me just set up like a little stall and they're like selling clothes and stuff. There was one under like an underpass for this like big massive roundabout, and everyone was like underneath and had all their like clothes laid out. Some really nice like vintage stuff, like t-shirts and jeans and things like that. Sunglasses, hats. It's just cool to see, you know. It's yeah, that was my favorite city. I'm not much of a city person, but Mexico City is unbelievable. I really, really enjoyed that now. I think Ben was the same. I think Ben really liked it too. Going to Guatemala next month. Route recommendations and hostels. Hostels. If you're looking for somewhere cheap in Antigua, there's a hostel called La Gaceta, and that's where we stayed both times we were in Antigua. And it's basically like all these 2-man tents in the hostel. It sounds strange, but it's actually really nice. It's like your own little private room, and some of them are inside and some of them are outside, but it's absolutely perfect, because when you're so used to, you know, like people walking by you and turning lights on and stuff, it's nice to just have your own area. Like you put your stuff in there, it's like your own little room, you know. And that's where we resided when we were in Antigua. For Samuk Champay, I would recommend staying in Lanquin, because we spent 2 nights out in Samuk, kind of like out in the countryside, and as beautiful as it is, it's quite remote, and the only way to get in and out of the town is you basically like stand out on the road, and people will pick you up, but they expect you to pay. So it's not really like hitchhiking, it's more like everybody does it. They'll drive you in, but they'll tell you, oh, it's however much, 50 Cansal, or I can't remember exactly, but it's cheap, but that's the only way in and out of the town. So you're kind of stuck in the hostel, eating their food, paying their price for beer, and it's not expensive, but it is a little bit extra towards if you're staying in the town. You can go up to the shop, or, you know, go to the little market and things like that. So I would recommend staying in Lanquin. We stayed in Vista Verde, which is across from Zephyr Lodge. So if you look up hostels in Samuk Champay or Lanquin, Zephyr Lodge is like the most popular one. It's got this big, like nearly infinity pool, kind of looking out over the forests, and it's like the rooms are really nice and stuff. But we stayed in Vista Verde, which is you can see them from each other, and Vista Verde was basically the same, just a little bit more basic. But the room was really nice, and because there was 5 of us, we kind of got put in a dorm on our own, so it was nice, you know, everyone in it, and really cool pool. And again, yeah, just looking out over the green jungle, and it was cheaper. So that would be my recommendation for there. In Puerto Escondido is another one. It's kind of hard to decide where to stay, because you have La Punta, which is where all the surfers go, and then you have just like the town itself, and they're a bit apart. So we stayed in Bridge Tower Hostel, I believe it's called, which was an outrageous hostel. I think that was one of the nicest ones I stayed in, but it is kind of away from the surfing spot, which isn't a big deal. I mean, you just get a little collectivo to the town, and it's no problem at all. It's cheap too. But if you do want to be able to just like get up in the morning and walk straight out to go surf, that's a little bit kind of out of the way, but it's an outrageous hostel. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think any other unbelievable hostels we stayed in. I think, where did we stay? In El Paradon, there's like a row of hostels all on the beach. They're all really nice, so any one of them would do the finest. I can't remember what ours was called. But Millie, one of the girls, she went and volunteered in Coquerie, I think it's called, and they have like this outrageous pool, and all the hostels are right on the beach, so you literally just like walk out and there's the sea, but the waves there are way too far beyond my ability level is what they are, so I didn't do any surfing down there. What was your favourite food from either country? Which has a better cuisine? I mean, Mexico is known for its food. Mexican food is outrageous. And people might argue that it's all just like meat and cheese, but what else do you need, really? The tacos were outrageous, quesadillas, chilaquiles. Just, yeah, go to Mexico. And actually, if you're interested in Mexican food, I did a video with Brent Tim, and he is probably the best on the internet for knowing where to go when you want to eat good food. So his entire page is him traveling the world and eating the best food. So go check his channel out or watch my video. All the spicy meats and smoked meats are just outrageous. Yeah, Mexico for cuisine. Guatemala is kind of similar to like Nicaragua. It's just rice, beans, guacamole. Yeah, that was what I was seeing a lot of anyway. Maybe there's something I was missing. I'm not too in tune with all the different foods in different countries, but yeah, Mexican food was unbelievable and cheap. Recommendations for the best way to get to Guatemala from Ireland. I know when Ben came out, he stopped in New York. So he actually spent 2 days in New York, I think. I would actually recommend doing that. If you're traveling a long distance and the flights are quite expensive, you may as well stop off in a new place on the way. Like, make a little bit of an adventure out of the journey there. So that's what I'm doing with Australia. I'm stopping off in Indonesia for 2 weeks, and it's working out cheaper. You might have to like fly out of a different airport, but if you're staying there for like 3 days, I mean, what's the hassle in getting a bus down to a different part of the city to get a different airport, you know? Does that make sense? I'm sure you get what I mean. So yeah, I would say try look for places in like America to stop off, or I'm sure you could do like France. I did France going to Panama, so you have like Charles de Gaulle. But yeah, if you wanna make a little bit of an adventure out of your journey there, I would say stop off in America. Why not? This one's from Nettie. Nettie was one of the 2 girls that I met in Panama and then met again in Honduras. Then we spent all of Guatemala together. Who was your favourite person to travel with in Guatemala? Having been there was actually really good. And the 2 girls said to me when he arrived that they went from understanding every word I said to only catching every like second or third word. Because I presume we were just speaking really fast. Like, I think I'm speaking a little bit slower than I normally would right now. Because especially in the Midlands, we tend to mumble and not really pronounce our words. And then especially like when you're with one of the lads as well, you're using all your slang and stuff like that. I'm sure they didn't really catch on to a lot of it. But yeah, having been there was really nice. Also, it's nice to see a familiar face when you've been away from home for a while. So yeah, that was really good. Any places to stay away from or anywhere you regret going? I did not like Guatemala City at all. So there's a bit of like, I don't know, an unwritten rule, but they say like don't arrive somewhere late at night or when it's dark, because it gives you like straight away kind of like a bad impression of the place. So what happened was when I left Honduras, I didn't take a shuttle because the shuttle was kind of expensive. So I took a bus. I took a bus to the border with another fella that was staying in the hostel. He was going a different way when we got to Guatemala. He was heading for like El Salvador, but I was going to Guatemala City. So we got to this like commuter town, got to the town, got on a bus to Guatemala, and I thought it was going to take like 3 hours. The bus took like 5, so it was pitch black by the time we got to the bus terminal in Guatemala City. Luckily it had Wi-Fi because I had bought a SIM in Honduras and was told that it would work for Guatemala, and then when I topped it up in Guatemala it just didn't work. So I was left without a SIM card, connected to the Wi-Fi in the bus terminal, and tried to look for an Uber. So the Uber gave me like a certain price, and then I went out to the taxi rank out at the front of the building, and they were like, oh yeah, I'll do it for the same. And I was like, yeah, grand, that's okay, but we're gonna have to go to an ATM first so I can take out money. And your mom was like, yeah, no problem. And I don't know, he was a little bit like, you could tell he was a bit of a chancer, but I was like, why not, we'll go. So he brought me to an ATM, and then we drove into like the centre of the city, and I had offline maps downloaded, which I would recommend you do. Either get the offline maps on Google Maps or download Maps.me. They're 2 good ones to have. And I could see that he was going into like the centre of the city, and I was kind of like, what is this lad doing? And then we just like stopped on this random road. It looked quite dodgy, to be fair, but there was like loads of people around, and there was like a taxi rank, and he was like, oh, uno momento, and I was like, okay, grand. And he got out and he went over to this taxi, and he came over and he was like, oh, you can't come with me anymore, it's not safe for you to come with me. And I was like, that's a lie. He was like, you have to go with him. And we'd agreed on a price of, I don't know, let's say it was 350 Kinsal. I was like, okay, so who do I give the 350 to? Do I give it to you or do I give it to him? And he was like, oh, 150 for me, 300 for him. And I was like, come on, man, don't feel like that. And then he was like, oh, do you have a problem? And I was like, this just not worth it. Like, so I gave him the 150, and then the taxi, the actual, like, your man who ended up bringing me to Antigua in the end was actually dead on. He was so sound, we were chatting away. And yeah, so I had to give him like 300 as well. But I haven't really heard good things about Guatemala City. Now, saying that, Brent Tim, he quite enjoys it. Maybe there is certain places that are good, but anyone I spoke to, they were kind of like, nah, it's a little bit dodgy. It's kind of like San Jose in Costa Rica. Like, you're only really there if you need to be there. And I think there's only like 3, so it's like broken out into zones. There's only like 3 zones that they recommend tourists to visit. So yeah, not ideal. And I know I hate telling people not to go places because they might have a completely different experience to me. So maybe you would enjoy it, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. From visiting Guatemala, Mexico, could you list your favorites from the countries? Like, I think I'd nearly be naming everywhere. Excuse me. Like, Guatemala. Antigua is really nice. It's like it used to be the capital, I think. And all the buildings are like 1 story high, except I believe it's all the important people have 2-story buildings. Also, they can only paint their houses certain colours, and you have to get approved from the government to paint your house. So you have to like send in the colour that you're going to paint your house, and they give you the okay. So that's really cool. Also in Antigua, like, you have the volcano hikes. They're unbelievable. Then you go up to like Sumuk Champey, and you do like your water rafting and your jungle hike and stuff like that, so that's really cool as well. Then in Flores, in northern Guatemala, you have Tikal, which is insane. It's an old Mayan city, an old Mayan city, and the structures there are outrageous. I just don't understand how they had the knowledge to do what they did, but yeah, it's unbelievable. Then in Mexico, San Cristobal, again, is kind of similar to Antigua, like it's just a small sort of old colonial town. And then you have, what is the name of, is it Chamula? There's a town near San Cristobal where it's completely run by the locals, and I think it's called an autonomous region. So the guards don't really like interfere with what the locals do. And they have this church where it's no longer actually a part of the Christian church or the Catholic church, because they sacrifice chickens there still. So you can go and you pay like a visitor's fee into this church, and you basically watch these chickens being sacrificed. It might sound like gruesome. What I first imagined when I heard about it was there'd be people up at the altar and they'd be like cutting the chickens' necks, but it's actually more of like they just suffocate the chicken. And it sounds bad, but there's no like screaming out of the chickens or anything like that, and it's just very interesting to see how other people, I don't know, worship God, I guess, or how they give thanks. So it's meant to be like, if you've had a portion of good luck, or if you want someone to do well in a certain thing, you go and you sacrifice a chicken, you offer it up to the gods as like a thank you, or like a hopefulness that someone's going to get on well. And yeah, very, very interesting place. Then Puerto Escondido, I didn't surf there, so I'm not really sure what the surfing's like, but the town's really nice. It's mad. Like there's big massive markets. You can get really nice like old vintage stuff in there. Like what I think happens is they buy them from America, and so they get them in like big barrels. You get like a barrel of 25 kilo clothes or a bundle, and then whatever you get is what you get. Like they just open it up and put it out, so you get like really nice Levi's, like old vintage fleeces and stuff like that. It's really, really cool stuff there. And then you have, the beach is absolutely amazing. You can go like release turtles, you can go on a dolphin like cruise. So like we went out in a boat, and if you've seen like any of my TikToks, I actually use the clip quite a lot, and it's them like up in front of the boat like recording down, and all these dolphins are just like crossing over in front of the boat. So yeah, there's pretty good opportunities to see some cool wildlife as well. That's the first time I saw a sea turtle as well. They're like my favorite animal. So yeah, there's so much to do. Silly, another girl that I met in Panama, says everything about Guatemala. Take your time in Guatemala, because it takes so long to get places that the last thing you want to be doing is every second day getting on a 12-hour bus journey. So I would say move slow. It can be time if you're under time. It can be hard if you're under like time restraint, but if you have the opportunity to travel slow, do. We spent a month, and I mean you could easily spend longer. There's like places further east that we didn't get to see. There's a town on the west that I didn't get to see. So yeah, I would say if you get the opportunity to travel through Guatemala, take your time. And as you're going as well, so let's say you're in Antigua, like people will have come from the north, they will have come from Flores, from Lanquin, people will be up from El Paradon, there'll be people coming up from like El Salvador, so they might stop in a town on the way. And literally like the people who've just come from somewhere are the best people to ask. So yeah, if you hit like Antigua, El Paradon, Samook Champay, Lankeen, they're like the big ones. Livingston is meant to be unbelievable. It's like this real like rural town out in, like by the coast. It's like really small and it's kind of tough to get to, but because it's hard to get to, it's just beautiful. So yeah, that would be my recommendations for Guatemala. Some must-sees and overrated places. Must-sees are Volcano Fuego. So do that hike and just watch it erupt at night time, and you just see all this lava just spilling out of this volcano. Go to Puerto Escondido and do like the turtle racing and the dolphin tour. Go to Mexico City and do like a guided tour. So you do like free walking tours. Me and Ben signed up for ours and we were actually the only two on it. So we basically got a completely private tour of the historic center of Mexico City. And your man, like, he was so good. He was giving us so many recommendations. Like, oh, if you want to go, like, this place is really good for like food. He was like, if you want a nice view of the city, you go up the tower. Yeah, I would love to go back to Mexico City and spend more time there. As far as like overrated places, I don't think there's many like overrated, like, but there's one place. So Lake Atitlan in Guatemala is another really cool place. It's a huge lake and they have all these little towns all around the edge of it. What's the name? I think San Pedro was the one that I kind of disliked, just because it was very hippie and it's not really my kind of scene. Towards like where we stayed, if I think of the names, I'll put them up on the screen, or I'll just actually check my maps, because I don't want to get this. I don't want to like send you to the wrong place. Okay, yeah, I found it. So I would recommend staying in San Pedro, and then you can just like take like a boat across the lake over to San Marcos. Lots of people were like kind of raving about San Marcos, but yeah, it was just a bit too hippie for me. It's just not really my scene. But it's still cool to see, like. But yeah, I would recommend staying in San Pedro La Laguna when you're on Lake Atitlan. As far as that, like, there was nowhere really disappointing. Like, there was nowhere people were like, oh, go there, and when I got there I was really disappointed. El Paradon is quite like party heavy, so if you're not really big into partying, there's not a whole lot else to do. So just keep that in mind if you are going to make the trip all the way down there. Our trip there was actually, it was a little bit outrageous. We went in from Lake Atitlan. We went back to, was it from Lake Atitlan? Yeah, from Lake Atitlan. Went back to Guatemala City. Picked up one of Nettie's friends and took a 7-hour bus, I want to say. I think it was something like 7-hour bus down to, not even to El Paradon. It was like a town that was like 40 minutes away from El Paradon, and from there we had to get a lancha, like a boat, to El Paradon, but it was like pitch black, and everyone was just so fed up. And we got there and there was no boat, and there was a young lad and like I don't know, a chap maybe in his like 60s, and we were like, is there a boat? Because we have no other way of getting to El Paradon. You have to go like back on yourself like 40 minutes to then drive another 40 minutes. I don't know, it just takes so long to get there. So if you are going to go, maybe a shuttle is the best idea. That's how we left, and it was just so much handier. They're a lot more expensive, so you can basically do like public transport, or you can get like private shuttles. Public transport if you have time, and yeah, I mean, most people have time when they're going on a trip like that. I would say take the public transport, and it's just more fun as well. You're trying to like navigate it yourself and things like that. It makes for pretty interesting stories. But if you want to get there like quickly and get picked up at your door and dropped off at your door, take a shuttle bus, or yeah, like a private shuttle. It just takes the hassle out of it. Did your expected budget meet your end budget? So Central America isn't actually overly cheap. I mean, you can do it on the cheap, but if you want to enjoy yourself and do like the fun stuff and like tick off all the boxes, like I kind of sacrificed the entirety of Costa Rica because it was just too expensive for me. I aimed to spend 1,000 a month, and I went over. I'd say I ended up spending like 1,300 a month. So quite a big like discrepancy, but in hindsight, I didn't say no to anything. So I did everything that I wanted to do. And there's a lot to be said for that. Like I didn't miss out on going out or going on like a tour or something like that because I was trying to keep my money. So I don't regret overspending a little bit. So yeah, it's nice to set a budget, but I would say like just slightly overestimate how much you're going to spend, because as well as that, like when you get home, like the worst thing ever is just being flat broke, which I got home and then I went back out to Spain for a month. So when I got back home in the middle of the summer, I had no money and it was not fun. So I would say, yeah, overshoot, and then you'll be happy when you have a little bit of extra pocket money when you get home. But no, my expected budget did not meet my end budget, but I don't regret it at all. Next one is there anything you didn't expect before your trip? One sec, I can't read, I'm gonna have to read that again. Oh, is there anything you didn't expect before your trip that you'd like to have known about beforehand? Probably how expensive Costa Rica was. Like, it's a little bit ridiculous, kind of. In my opinion, anyway, for that part of the world. I know it's extremely like westernized now, and there's a lot of especially American tourists coming down. It's kind of it's bumped up the price a lot. Now, saying that, I was kind of going to all the popular places like Puerto Viejo is like really popular, and that was expensive. San Jose isn't really that nice. I would recommend, if you have to stop there, do, but I wouldn't recommend staying there for an extended period of time. Again, make your own opinion about it, but I wasn't overly fond of it. Also, how unbelievable El Salvador and Honduras are. Like, two countries. I can see the next question as well. It's about like, did I feel safe considering the high crime rates? So I'll tie the bow of them in together. Like, those countries, if you've watched my last, not my last one, but this on El Salvador and Honduras, you know, I loved those countries. And they get extremely bad like rap in the media. Now, there is crime in the countries, but the majority of it is like gang on gang crime and violence, and people are getting caught in the crossfire, and that's where sort of the, you know, like innocent people dying at the hands of these gangs for no reason is really upsetting, because the people in those countries that are doing good are the nicest people ever, and you can see that they're like, they want to express their appreciation for you coming to the country so much, because they're aware of, I think I'm going off on a tangent here, I don't think I'm even making sense anymore, but basically El Salvador and Honduras get they have such a bad reputation, and you can see that the people there, they want to show you how nice they are, and they're amazing people. You could be walking down the road in Santa Ana in El Salvador, and people will just stop you, and at first you're kind of like, more are they trying to get out of me? They're not trying to get anything out of you. They're like, how are you? Where are you from? How come you're here? Oh, if you want nice food, check out that pupuseria over there, which pupusas, unbelievable. They're like a little tortilla with stuffing inside of it. Not actual stuffing, but they're like stuffed. So they have like cheese, or get them with jalapenos and frijol, which is like black beans all blended up, and yeah, unbelievable food. And yeah, they're the nicest people ever. It's the same in Honduras. I was sitting on a bus, and this young lad was sitting beside me, and he just started chatting to me about school and about work and how he's going to college and working as well, and it's just a normal lad. Like, towards, I don't think in Ireland, if I was sitting down and, well, maybe I'd be different now because I've like experienced that, I'd probably be more inclined to talk to the person beside me, but people don't really like, I suppose maybe because you don't see it, but you don't really like, you tend to throw in your headphones and not chat to the person beside you, but they're like, yeah, the nicest people ever. So it's kind of a shame that they get such a bad, like, they have such a bad name kind of in the media. But to combat that, so if you are feeling like unsafe, I would say travel during the day, don't travel at night. When you get to your hostel, like, ask the people working in the hostel, what's it like here? What are the kind of like do's and don'ts? Like, we were told in Mexico, don't be on the beach at night, because a lot of the times, like, the police will come along and they'll just say like, oh, you're doing drugs, and they'll fine you. So they're like, the people living there are the best people to ask. So ask the people working in the hostels, or if you get chatting to someone on the bus, ask them what the town's like. Only really bring out like as much cash as you kind of need, unless you're like going to the ATM. Go to the ATM, go back to your hostel, leave your excess cash in the locker or wherever you feel safe leaving it. And yeah, just kind of like use your head a bit, like you're not at home. I'd put it like, I wouldn't, so like I'm from the Midlands, I wouldn't go like wandering the streets of Dublin on my own at 4 a.m, because I don't know Dublin, even though I'm still in Ireland, and I just, you know, it's not a sensible thing to do. So take that with you when you go abroad as well. But yeah, amazing countries, and yeah, I can't speak highly enough of them. They're unbelievable. And I think I'm gonna end this one here. It's been like 40 minutes, so if you've made it this far, thanks very much for watching, and I'll probably catch you in Australia. Cheers.